Hey folks, it's the Piston Fly here, hope you're well. Once again, another month has flown by, it's time for another bike news. This is everything that's been going on in the world of motorcycling here in the UK for the month of May 2021. Stick around, stay tuned, let's have a look at what MCN's had to say. Okay, so huge thanks to MCN as ever for providing such great input for this bike news review every month. I do appreciate it, guys. I only skim the surface of what's in MCN, so if you are at all interested in the stuff that you hear, then get yourself a subscription, which is obviously what I do. It's only about 50 quid a year or something, and you get one of these every week. It's a great read. Anyway, advert over. Moving straight on then. First story up in this month's bike news, Suzuki Sharpened. Now this is a bike that's been all over social media and so on for the last week or so, because it was the UK launch of the GSX S1000 naked bike from Suzuki. They basically, it's a Euro 5 update is pretty much what I can tell from it. It's got some new electronics and bits and pieces. Let's just see what the highlights here are that MCN have said of it. So Suzuki have released the revamped version of the GSX S1000. The superbike derived 999cc inline 4 at the GSX S1000's heart has been considerably reworked with a modest power increase and a reduction in emissions. That's the Euro 5 thing. Peak power has risen from 148 to 150 brake horsepower. I'm sure we're probably not going to notice that. It's got a flatter torque curve, we may notice that. New Euro 5 friendly exhaust, enhanced set of electronic rider aids. Well, frankly, I could live without those, but anyway, they're all doing it these days, aren't they? So that's the way it's going. 3 riding modes, 5-stage traction control, including fully off, quick shifter, auto blipper, and a new LCD dash. Traction control and ABS systems are not lean sensitive, and it's also had a restyle of the bodywork, which is the thing really that stands out, doesn't it? When you look at it, what struck me when I first saw this was, well, what I initially thought was, what have they done to that bike? Because it was a good looker anyway, I thought. Now, I wouldn't say it's bad looking, but I do think they've made an error with that stacked front light. Completely a matter of personal taste. You may disagree with me. And since I've been seeing it more and more on some of the launch reviews and so on, it's started to grow on me a little bit. So maybe, you know, once I get to see one in the flesh and maybe ride one, then perhaps it will grow on me. But initially, I didn't like the look of the lights. Now, I never rode the old GSX 1000 as far as I can remember. So I would love a go on this. So I'll have a chat to my friends at Suzuki and see if in a few months' time, once all the hype has calmed down, I can have a go with this and, you know, do my usual thing of riding it in the rain in Slough, see how it performs. But I suspect I'm going to like it because I loved the GXS S1000F, the Fed predecessor of this, which was just a brilliant bike. Anyway, so I am looking forward to having a go at this. The other thing to mention, it's 10,999. So for a sophisticated bike, that's pretty good value, isn't it? So if you can get past the lights, or if I can get past the lights, I think this is going to be a winner. But we'll see. But at the moment, just look at the pictures, the lights don't work for me. Am I alone on that, or would you agree? What else we've got to say? It will be arriving in late June in dealers, apparently. So there we go. That's the Suzuki GSX 1000. I think a bike not to be overlooked. If it's anything like, as I say, the old 1000F was, which I really liked. I mean, what a great bike that was. All right, moving on. So CFMoto, Chinese bikes. Now, whenever I talk about Chinese bikes, I always come in for a load of flack in the comments with people saying, you know, don't promote Chinese bikes, don't get in, you know, why buy things from a terrible regime, etc., etc. I get all that, but I try not to do politics here on the channel. I'm just looking at the bikes, and I normally say ignore Chinese bikes at your peril, because they're getting better and better, and that is the case. This one from CFMoto is an adventure bike. It's called the 800 MT, and unlike the previous Suzuki, I don't know about you, but I think this thing is a really nice looking bike. It's hard to tell just from the picture here, but it looks like it's quality built, and I love the styling they've done on the front end. I mean, this is a front end that the likes of BMW and others could learn from, or in particularly Harley-Davidson, given the new off-road bike that they've just launched, which I can't remember, the Pan America, isn't it? I mean, that's getting rave reviews, but I just can't get past the looks of that front headlight, whereas this front headlight looks superb. Anyway, let's read what MCN said about the CFMoto 800 MT. So they've revealed their biggest bike yet. It's called the 800 MT, and the new bike uses the 799cc parallel twin from KTM's 790 Adventure. So it just shows you, it may be Chinese, but the manufacturing plants they're using are exactly the same as mainstream manufacturers are using. This is the KTM engine. It's got a slipper clutch, cornering ABS, ride-by-wire throttle, quick shifter, and multiple riding modes. Cruise control, TFT dash with navigation, wow. Keyless ignition, not so well. Automatic LED lights, wow, automatic LED lights. Fog lights, heated grips, and an alarm. So I mean, it's well specified. 825mm seat height, which is 25mm lower than KTM's Adventure, which is a good move because I find the big Adventures a bit too tall for me as a shorty. It's only been officially released at a domestic bike show in China so far, so we don't know when it's coming here, and we don't know what price it's going to be. But given CFMoto in the past have always produced very competitively priced bikes, I imagine this is going to be, you know, excellent value. So on paper, it sounds an amazing spec, doesn't it? And to me, it looks good. So am I alone in thinking this looks good? Would you avoid it like the plague, or what? What do you think of the CFMoto 800 MT? Do you think we should get it? I think it looks good. I'd be intrigued to have a ride of it and have a close look to see what the build quality is like. But they are getting better and better. There's a few more Chinese bikes coming, I'll warn you, in this review. So if it upsets you that I talk about them, probably best to move away. All right, moving swiftly on. Harley-Davidson, talking of Harley-Davidson, turn back time. New Electra Glide revival invokes the swinging 60s. So here we are, the Electra Glide, one of their iconic motorcycles. I've never ridden an Electra Glide, I must admit, because again, I can't get past the looks. These big bat-fairinged American cruisers, I just can't get on with them at all. It amazes me that American tastes are that different, that you like them. If you're an American viewer, and I know I have quite a lot of American viewers, do you like this? It must just be a cultural difference. There's nothing about those big batwing fairing bikes that I can enjoy. Again, personal taste thing. I'm sure it works brilliantly, and I'm sure it's great to ride. But yeah, I can't get past those looks personally. Anyway, let's see what MCN have got to say about it. So Harley have launched a new Icons collection, starting with the Electra Glide Revival. The Electra Glide first entered the range in 1965. It's incredible, isn't it? And I guess if you looked at a 1965 one, it would probably look visibly similar, which is incredible. The new bike is powered by the latest version of Harley's Milwaukee 8114 engine in 1868cc, guys, an engine I have ridden now a couple of times with, more about that later. Puts out 118 feet of torque, which is what these bikes are all about. A giant full-colour TFT with sat-nav, and I bet that's, it doesn't say here, but I bet that's sat-nav that's integrated into the bike, as opposed to having to use an app on your phone, which is a right pain, I think. Unless you're using one of those beeline type things, which is just a head to your phone. Those make a lot of sense. But when manufacturers do these things like Triumph and BMW have done, where they say they've got sat-nav on their TFTs, but actually you have to use their app to make it work. I just don't like that. Anyway, God, I'm very whingy today. You must have got me in a bad mood. Anyway, moving on. Full colour TFT sat-nav, cornering ABS, lean sensitive traction control. This is a well-spec bike. Hill hold control, cruise control. Harley are making just 1,500 worldwide, and dealers in the UK are only getting one each. So if you want one of these, you're going to have to really want one, because there's not going to be many of them around. And this is the kicker: the price, £27,995. So 28 grand for one of these. So you've got to really want one. It says here they're sure to sell out fast. Well, if there's only a few in the country, they probably will. But yeah, what I think. I mean, I'm glad it exists, but I'm not sure it's for me. What do you make of that? I've got some more Harley rides coming soon, so as I say, I'll talk about that at the end of the of bike news. I'll do some parish notices for you, and I'll tell you about some of the videos that are coming up on the channel, which includes a Harley one or two. All right, next up. Watch out GS. KTM's new tech-heavy 1290 Super Adventure S wants to be number one. So here, this is one of these 250-mile road tests that MCN do. They do it on the same test route. It's a very good way of testing bikes, I think. They've pitted the KTM 1290 Super Adventure S against the BMW R1250 GS TE. So 15 grand for the KTM, 17 grand for the TE version of the GS, and you'll probably want to add a few more bits and pieces in there. So the GS is more expensive. Can it still retain its crown as the bike to have? I don't know. Let's see what the verdict was from MCN. So this is from John Urry. He says, when I read the spec list of the 1290 Super Adventure S, I really thought that it would run the R1250 GS TE very close. I think there's a but coming here. But the reality is that the GS remains one step ahead. So glad to hear that. As a GS fanboy myself, I love the GS. It's great that it's still top of the tree. Mine's getting old now. Mine's a late 2013 to 2014 model year, I think, my bike. So it's all analogue and so on, but it's still going strong. I've ridden it. Last weekend I was in Wales in hideous weather, did loads of miles, 800 miles or something over the weekend, including there and back. And I thoroughly enjoyed being back on my GS. I love these things. So I am very biased. So anyway, carry on. So while performance is all well and good, what adventurers want is ease and the ability to cover miles in comfort, which the KTM frustratingly lacks. I would agree with that. It depends what you're buying a bike for, doesn't it? If you want a sporty bike, then maybe don't get an adventure bike. And of course, KTMs are all about, going places quick, aren't they? I know it's dull to hear, but there is basically nothing I can find to fault with the GS, bar the fact that on the spec tested, it's a fair bit more costly than the KTM. Yeah. we've got to be fair here. The GS is more expensive, so you'd hope and expect it to be better, wouldn't you? But yeah, interesting that John Hurry has made it that clear cut, because most of the other things I've seen have put it a bit closer. I recently watched a review, my mate Bruce, Teapot One, did you see him? He did a review of the KTM versus the GS. He's got a new GS, and he said he thought it was a GS Beta. Well, he's sort of implied that. He didn't actually say that in the end, but he put it much closer than MCN have. Maybe I'll get to ride the KTM 1290 Adventure at some point and see what I think, but it doesn't actually, the looks of it and so on, it's just a bit big and tall for me. When I rode the older version, I wasn't that keen. I'm not sure, given that I only do produce a few videos, I'm quite choosy about the bikes that I ride these days. I'm not sure that's going to get on my list, but if you all tell me you want me to ride it, I'll go and get one and have a go on one. But yeah, there we go. Anyway, that's the KTM 1290 Super Adventure S is the version they tested, and sadly didn't match up to the GS. I say sadly, it depends what you mean, what camp you're in, doesn't it? Right, last story in this first paper. Once again, another Chinese motorcycle, again CFMoto. This is the 300 SR. It says here, yes, it's cheap, but the CFMoto 300 SR is closer than ever to the mainstream. And again, looking at this picture, it's hard to tell from a picture, but the quality of this bike doesn't look far off, does it? It's got a nice, proper, shiny fuel tank, none of this matte paint rubbish that we seem to be getting a lot of these days. It looks like a quality bike. Let's see what they've said, the highlights I've pulled out here. Styled by Kiska, the Australian firm who draw KTMs, the SR has a specification to support its blingy image with a colour TFT dash, phone connectivity, modes, striking daytime running lights, Bosch ECU and fuel injection, ABS and all-round LED lamps. Yet despite all this, CFMoto want just $3,999 on the road. Now, you cannot argue with that value. You may dislike the fact that it comes from China, and you may disagree with what China does. I'm not getting there. But the bike itself, you got to admit, for $4,000, that's a lot of bike. With 28 brake horsepower at 8,750 RPM, the motor is 10 horses down on Yamaha's 321cc R3 and does not have the oomph, but this doesn't stop it being entertaining. It's got low mass at 160 kilograms wet. I mean, that is a lightweight bike, isn't it? And 80 miles per gallon is easy. However, the front brake is lacking and fades worryingly. And the fueling isn't too hot, is what Mike Armitage, the reviewer here, has said. But there we go. I mean, it looks great for sure, and at that money, I mean, you know, what do you expect? You get what you pay for, don't you? I think that looks good. So just summing up, then, he says, don't dismiss CFMoto. They have the largest European market share of all Chinese firms. That's amazing. And Europe's best-selling quad manufacturer, and the 300 SR is closer to price of rivals than you'd think. That said, I'd still buy a 2-year-old Yamaha R3 for the same price as the showroom fresh SR. It'd have nicer ride quality, go faster, be better made, and appreciate less. So having said all that good stuff, he said I'd still have the Yamaha R3. Fair enough. But definitely these things are getting closer, aren't they? All right, that's it for the first paper. Quick swig of me coffee. By the way, brand new TMF mugs available on my website, www.thebissendenflyer.com. Slightly redesigned, put the logo on the front as opposed to that bit. Just works better, I think. Anyway, check them out. They're about, I don't know, £8, something like that. I might be wrong on that, but check them out if you fancy a new mug. Right, another advert over. Swiftly moving on. By the way, talking about adverts, I've had a lot of comments of people saying how many adverts are being served up on my YouTube channel of late, and they don't like it. So I apologise about that. The way it works is I can't decide where, when, or how many adverts are served up. YouTube do all that. They decide which videos they're going to put adverts onto. All I can decide is whether I'm going to turn them on or off. And as this is now a significant part of how I make my living, I can't afford to not have adverts, because that's how I make my money. So unfortunately, necessary evil. I'm sorry there are so many adverts, but you can usually skip them mostly. But there you go. You are getting it for free, so you know, let's not complain too much. Moving on. Right, yeah, this is interesting. This little story tucked down here, 2 into 1 for twice the fun. Now this is the Performance Experts S&S Cycle. They've created a new 2 into 1 exhaust for the Royal Enfield 650 Twins, bikes that I'm a big fan of because I have an Interceptor of more later. It's built for power, not noise. It's paired with their high flow air filter. It'll put out 12% more power, which is worth having, and drops the weight by 12 kilograms. Definitely worth having. But then this is the kicker. It costs from, so that usually means it's going to be more than this, £685, 700 quid for an exhaust on a bike that costs £5,000 or thereabouts, £5,500. That is ridiculous price, isn't it? I'm sure it's nicely made, but it's and I'm sure it makes a big difference to weight and everything else. But my goodness me, there are cheaper options available. I've got one from Tech Bike Parts. It sounds awesome. It similarly makes the bike go quicker. It similarly makes the bike lighter, and it's about 100 quid. What a winner that was. So anyway, that way, who's going to buy one for 685 quid? Do you think that's reasonable? I think that's outrageous. Right, Next story. I think this is the last Chinese story. I said there are a few of these. First Chinese Norton debuts. This is interesting because this is Zongshen. Do you remember a while back when Stuart Garner was still doing his thing with Norton? He did a deal with the new engine, the new Norton engine, where Zongshen could use it. And actually, here we are. Here's the first bike that's actually got the license-built version of the Norton engine on it. Let's see what MCN say. Previous owner Stuart Garner licensed the rights to the new DOHC water-cooled 650cc twin to China's Zongshen. Norton later unveiled the Scrambler-style Atlas Ranger and Atlas Nomad using the engine. However, the Cyclone RX-6 has overtaken its Norton siblings by clearing its final pre-production hurdle of Chinese type approval. The Chinese-made Norton engine makes a certified 70 brake horsepower, so that's on a par with things like the V-Strom 650. It has a top speed of 112 miles per hour and a wet weight of 245 kilograms. So it's quite a weighty bike. It looks nice though. It's got Nissin brakes, Bosch electronics, a TFT dash and LED lights. And once again, I say it again, ignore Chinese bikes at your peril. This looks like a lot of bike for the money, doesn't it? I think it looks good, and it'll be really interesting to see what that engine's like, won't it? And isn't it fascinating that they've got the engine out before Norton, who designed it? I think there's a bit more coming in a later paper about Norton as well. I'm really hoping that they get their act together and we can see those new Norton bikes on the road. I'd love to have a ride on the Atlas Ranger and the Nomad. They looked great bikes when they were launched. We all know what happened to Norton, of course, but hopefully they'll be back soon. Right, moving on. Kings of performance. But are Ducati and Aprilia's tech-heavy V4s just too much for the road? Now, this is a question that comes up quite a lot, isn't it? I've not ridden the new Aprilia V4S, although I rode the older version, and the Panigale V4S, sorry, the Aprilia RS V4 factory, and the Panigale V4S I have ridden. Love that bike. And what I would say is they are too much for the road because they're not built for the road. They're built as track bikes, really, aren't they? But the point is, you can ride them on the road. Although I often complain about too much electronics on bikes, this is where they make sense. On these really powerful, performant bikes, the more electronics you can have, the better. Because when you ride these things on the road, they are very, very easy to ride. Flattering, forgiving, make you ride very well. The issue is the temptation to go fast. That's where I think they are too much for the road. But can you ride them on the road? These days, yes, you very much can. That wasn't the case maybe 10 years ago when Electra bikes were a handful on the road. These things now are just docile as you like, and then they're absolute beasts on the track. So they do what they're built for. Let's see what Nevesy, my favourite MCN reviewer, has to say. Their spec sheets may read almost identically, but to ride they're polar opposites. Interesting. The Aprilia still looks like an ageing bike, and it's still cramped. The Panigale V4S is harder to get the best out of with its more aggressive power delivery and a more fidgety chassis. As much as a piece of art as it is a motorcycle, and I would agree with that. I just love the looks of Panigales. If Mrs. Fly would let me, I'd stick my 899 in the front room in a heartbeat. A Super Naked makes more sense on the road, of course, but both have performance beyond your wildest dreams. But it's the Ducati just edges it in terms of poor emozioni, which I think is Italian for emotion. Thank you for that one, Nevesy. So he likes the Panigale more. I think I'm probably with him, although maybe the Aprilia makes a bit more sense in terms of comfort. I must, at some point, get myself a ride on the new version of the bike. They're both lovely bikes, aren't they? But they're both expensive beasts, aren't they? 23 grand for the Aprilia, 25 grand for the Panigale. A lot of money for a new motorcycle. Let's wait for 5 years and maybe pick one up second hand, but there you are. I do apologise, by the way, there's a lot of noise going on outside. There's some workmen doing some stuff to tarmac. If you can hear it via the mic, I'm sorry about that, but I'm cracking on regardless. The show must go on. Right, what do we got here then? Really, this is the new BMW M1000RR. This is the first time that BMW Motorrad, the biking arm, have used the M moniker, which they use obviously for their M Sport stuff in the car world, and they've applied it to the what we previously knew as the S1000RR, a beautiful bike. I've only ridden one once, but I was absolutely blown away by it. I think it's possibly the best current sports bike that you can ride on the road. From talking about what we just were about whether bikes can be ridden on the road or not, the new Electra bikes, this one very definitely can, and it's getting very noisy outside now, so I'll come back to you in a moment. Right, that noise hasn't entirely gone away, but it's gone a little bit quieter, and I've actually shut my windows. I'm going to just cook now instead under the lights. Anyway, so what did Nevesy say about the M1000RR? He said BMW's new M1000RR is insanely quick and one of the easiest superbikes for ordinary motorcyclists like you and me to ride fast on the track. But so is the S1000RR, which you can have for nearly half the price. The M feels so similar to the S1000RR, it just isn't worth paying the premium. So I suppose for mere mortals, that makes an awful lot of sense. I guess if you're shaving hundredths of a second off your track time because you're a racer, then of course it does make sense. But it is £31,000 or 39,355. Again, crazy amount of money for a motorcycle. I'm sure it's an incredible beast. It looks lovely, but I would I would agree with Neves. I'll be happy with the S1000RR. My mate John Chopsy, Lamb Chops Rides, he's recently blagged himself, king of the blaggers, Chopsy is, a 3-month, I think a 6-month loan. I think it's of this one, the M Sport version. So incredible bit of work there. Of all the vloggers I know, or YouTubers I know, Chopsy is king of the freebie. So well done to you, mate, for doing that. I must take a leaf out of his book and learn how he does that. But yeah, so I look forward to seeing what he makes of it as well. But at some point, maybe I can get a ride on one of these as well. I'll have a chat to, again, my friends at BMW. They're usually very helpful. Maybe I'm not sure I'll get a go on the M1000RR, but certainly the S1000RR, I really should. That is a bike that I loved. That is a bike that I should do a longer term review of. Get hold of one and, you know, do one of my in-depth reviews, because I really loved that bike when I rode it. Right, last story in this second paper, back to basics. Harley's Softail standard blends simplicity with the lowest price in the firm's UK lineup. Now, this comes from the fact that the old Sportster was discontinued for Europe because it didn't meet Euro 5 regulations. So what now is the cheapest bike? It's this one, the Softail standard. What have they got to say about it? Well, what they've said is the Sportsters weren't updated to meet Euro 5. This leaves this, the new for 2020 Softail standard, as the most affordable bike in Harley-Davidson's UK range. It's $12,995, which is quite a lot of money, I guess, for a bike of this type, but for a Harley, that's pretty good value when we were talking at 30 grand before, isn't it? So what is it? 1745 cc. It's got a riding position that feels alien at first. That's because it's the old, you know, feet forward cruisery thing, I guess, combining a low seat height with mid-set foot pegs and mini ape hanger bars. Yeah, I'm not sure the ape hanger bars quite would work for me. It does look quite cool on this bike though, although I can't help thinking in this country, if you ride around with 8 hangers, you're going to look a bit of a tool. But it does kind of work. I do like the looks of this bike, actually, very much. In fact, I like the looks of most Harleys, with the exception of the batwing ones. We've already covered that. It's a 297 kilogram curb weight though, so it's a heavy old beast. Even though it doesn't look very big or heavy, it is heavy. Suspension brakes are quite basic for a bike with a 13k price tag, apparently. The Speedo is a tiny LCD strip, which actually I rather like. There are no rider aids beyond mandatory ABS, which again, I rather like that as well. Although maybe traction control would make sense on a bike with this much grunt. I love the way that Harley do those minimalist Speedos. It was the same on the first Harley that I rode, which I can't remember the name of. I completely get that. I completely get the overall look. More Harley vids coming soon on my channel, by the way. We'll talk about that when we get to parish notices at the end. All right, cracking on through. How are we doing for time? Oh, all right, this is going to turn into a bit of a long one. I do apologise. Right, next up. Those are words that I've never said to Mrs. Fly. Right, here we go. New, what have we got? Oh, British 400 mile per hour record bid boosted by classic sales. Now, this is incredible. The 52 Express, this is this bike here with this chap sat in it, is a 1200 brake horsepower streamliner built by former GP racer Alex McFadzean, and it's powered by a helicopter gas turbine. He's a brave man, isn't he? Talks are underway to secure Guy Martin's services as potential rider, and Channel 4 may turn the campaign into a TV show, so that's probably worth seeing. Current outright world motorcycle record is 376.363 miles per hour. That was set in 2010 by American Rocky Robinson at Bonneville. McFadzean hopes to break 400 miles per hour in his attempt, which is expected to take part at the high salt desert at Uyuni in Bolivia in July 2022. So about a year's time, he's going to have a crack at being 400 miles an hour in this turbine-powered motorcycle, or he or Guy Martin, if they can secure him, I guess. Can you imagine doing 400 miles an hour on 2 wheels? Not for me. There are some brave people about, aren't they? But yeah, good luck to him. Let's hope it works out. Strikes me as very dangerous. Right, moving on. Norton. I said earlier we're going to talk about Norton a bit more, and here we go. New Norton build bikes and momentum, which is great news as far as I'm concerned. Norton's factory is taking shape with bikes being built and a grand opening planned in the near future. Wouldn't it be great to see that happen? 110 workers now on board. The factory has 7,000 square metres of covered space, large manufacturing area with capacity to build up to 8,000 bikes a year, which is great. I mean, a proper factory as opposed to an office block with a few hobbyists in it, which it kind of was before. Norton are currently building the last Commando run, and CEO John Russell says the trial builds have started on the V4s, or the V4S. V4s, that's the one. So that's absolutely great news as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Nortons. I suggest pretty much all British bikers have. There's a lot of love for the brand out there. It's a shame it's been through so many iterations of so much bad news, hasn't it? But this time I've got high hopes. Let's hope that John Russell, the new man at the head, is going to make this thing work. I've got I've got a degree of faith in this fella. It seems like he's going about it the right way. I'd rather they took the time and got it right than rushed and then couldn't deliver bikes. And hopefully they'll get the quality right this time. The old Nortons had some issues with quality control. Let's hope that all gets resolved, and I cannot wait to see these in the flesh, and indeed maybe I'll get to ride one as well, who knows. But maybe I should drop them a note and see if we could go and have a look around the factory or something. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? That would be interesting. An idea for myself there. All right, moving on. Next story, ready to rumble. Can the all-new Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS rough up the Ducati Streetfighter and KTM's Super Duke R? Now this is an interesting one because I have ridden all these bikes. In fact, the Triumph Speed Triple I've just had. Triumph came this morning and picked the bike up from me, and I published a video, or the one video on this, on Monday. So go and check that video out if you've not seen it already. Really like Triumph Speed Triples. I'm a Triumph fanboy generally, and I was really excited to ride this bike. Does it hold a candle to the other bikes? In my opinion, no, it doesn't. Again, go and watch the video and you'll see why I think that. For me, the Super Duke R and the Streetfighter are just leagues ahead. I do like the Speed Triple. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not quite got that je ne sais quoi that the other bikes have got. To be fair, it's not quite in the same league. It doesn't put out as much power. I'm not sure it's trying to compete with those. I think it's more trying to compete with the likes of MT10, stuff like that, which is another bike I like. Don't get me wrong, it's a lovely bike, but I was a little bit, if I'm honest, having thought about it, and when I had a close look at it again, when it went back this morning, a little bit disappointed in it. I like the fact the old bike had twin exhausts. I prefer them underneath the seat, but just having a single exhaust on one side doesn't look so good. The paint scheme colours are a bit dreary. Ride's lovely, it's a lot lighter, doesn't feel lardy, feels much more like a street triple now with more go, which is good. But for me, out of those three, I'd have the Streetfighter in a heartbeat. But then, it's £5 more expensive, so you'd expect it to be better. Anyway, let's see what MCN's verdict was. Do they agree with me? It says here, who's written this? I don't know, we'll come to that in a minute. I know Triumph have been billing this bike as the ultimate performance sports naked, but what on earth have they done to the Speed Triple? Oh dear. On some of my favourite B roads, I'm struggling to hang on to the RS as its Olin suspension is horribly harsh. I must admit the suspension is quite hard, but it is adjustable, so you should be able to adjust that out. It's firm, uncompromising, and not at all pleasant at low speed or over bumps, and the Brembo brakes bite with all the feel of a light switch. Well, they are grabby brakes, true. When the pace ups, the chassis starts to feel like it's working better, but then as you dip into the area where the new triple makes serious power, it becomes a real handful, fighting the electronics as the instant punch of torque tries to catapult you forward and upwards. It's more than a touch frantic and not that enjoyable at sub-warp speeds. So whoever this is didn't like it very much. Let's just see who's writing this. This is John Urry. Blimey, he's not a fan at all. Let's looking at this. They've given the Super Duke R 5 stars. They've given the Streetfighter 5 stars, and they've given the Speed Triple 4 stars. Always amazed me with this. When they went, when the launch was done of the Speed Triple, and I think MCN were there, they raved about it. Everybody raved about it. You then read these things a few weeks later, and suddenly it's not so good. What's going on there? This is one of the reasons I don't go to launches. I just think that, you know, in the heady atmosphere of a launch, and not these guys because these go to launches all the times, but if you're a YouTuber and you're flattered to be invited to one of these things, you're going to say good things about the bike regardless, so I steer clear. Anyway, regardless, let's see what John sums this up. So, as a huge fan of the Speed Triple, I can't help but feel disappointed by this latest incarnation. Triumph have fallen into the trap of believing the hype that super naked riders want a balls out naked sports bike. The Ducati, which you assume will be mental with its V4, in contrast is relaxed, forgiving, plush, and still more than happy to go bonkers when requested. I agree, it's a great bike in all regimes. The KTM is much of the same, although it still has a slightly is still slightly untamed. As it stands, the RS is just too sports focused. Interesting, I didn't come to that conclusion that it was too sports focused. I thought it was a nice bike on the road, but it didn't quite have that something, certainly that the KTM and the Streetfighter have. So if I was in that market, I'd go that way rather than the Triumph. So and also the main thing, this sounds ridiculous, I know, but for me, why do Triumph do such boring colours? If they made them in some nice glossy colours, might be a little bit more up for it. Anyway, last but not least, nothing specifically here that I wanted to go through. It was just a recognition that MCN always has an awful lot of sports pages at the back. Now I know that, you know, newspapers have sports pages at the back, but what are they here, like 10 pages or something of sports? Does anybody actually read them? I know some people are interested in racing. Personally, I have no interest in bike racing at all. I used to quite like MotoGP, but when it moved off of mainstream TV, I can't be bothered to pay extra money just to watch MotoGP. So I'm really not interested at all in what's going on in racing, or indeed the races themselves. I'm sorry, I'm sure they're lovely guys, but it's not for me. And MCN dedicates so much to that. Just interested in your comments below. Do you like bike racing? Am I in the minority here and it's something that very much I should get into, or is it something that just is a bit meh, like Formula One is these days? Well, that's a bit controversial, isn't it? Okay, last but not least, the last paper. How are we doing for time? Sorry, this is going on a bit long. Let's whiz this one off then, so to speak. Seventh Heaven UR7 wraps up all the good bits of the MT in an even sportier package. So this was big news in the last week. This is the new Yamaha R7. I think it looks great from the side. I'm not sure I like the looks from the front. The single headlight, again, I don't know what manufacturers are doing with headlights these days, but they seem to be able to ruin the looks of a motorcycle just by the headlight design, and the R7, I think, sadly doesn't quite work with the headlight, but from the side it looks beautiful. Now this is here really to replace that gap that the R6 left. The R6 was a bonkers 4-cylinder super sport bike, an absolute beast. I'm not sure this is going to quite bridge that gap if you're after a bonkers super sport. Anyway, let's see what MCN said. Yamaha have revealed an MT-07 based super sports bike named the R7. Its goal will be to bridge the gap once filled by the R6 between the dinky R3 and the monstrous R1. Designers have fitted a new ECU, new air intakes, revised exhaust and fresh fuel mapping. The R7 has short gear ratio in second, while the new slipper clutch prevents over revving or rear wheel hop on aggressive downshifts. There's even an optional quick shifter, which would be great on a bike like this. It's got fully adjustable 41mm upside down forks at the front. Geometry of the R7 remains similar to the MT-07, albeit with a 5mm shorter wheelbase and steeper head angle. The R7 is one of the most aerodynamic bikes around. It's narrower even than the R3 or the R125, which is quite something. With heavy competition from Aprilia's RS660, which I'm yet to ride, the R7 has a battle on its hands, but Yamaha says it'll cost around $8,000, gifting it a 2k advantage to the R7. So it's going to be good value, that's for sure. Possibly one of those bikes that would be excellent as a first big bike if you like sports bikes. Overall, I do think it looks good, but a 689cc parallel twin for me just doesn't quite work on a sports bike as much as a screaming 4-cylinder would. 72 brake horsepower, which is ample on the road, 188 kilograms wet, so nice and light, and about £8,000. So affordable as well. Well, as new bikes go, I'm not saying £8,000 is not a lot of money. Yeah, looks good. What do you think to the R7? Comments below, interested to see what you think. Wonder if I'll get a chance on that. It's difficult for me to ride Yamahas at any length, so we'll see. Here we are, world's fastest bobber brakes cover. This is the custom house Thornton 100 that do these wacky custom jobs of Triumphs, and they've gone hell for leather here with a 202 brake horsepower version of the bobber. So supercharged and nitrous injected version is how come it's got so much power. With over 200 brake horsepower, it's claimed to be the world's fastest bobber. Thornton 100, based near Silverstone, is headed by Jody Millhouse. Apart from the Roadtrex C15 supercharger, it's dry nitrous oxide injected, has TTS machine cases, forged pistons, custom cam and an updated clutch. It's got 165 brake horsepower at the wheel without nitrous, but you boost it and with the nitrous and you get 202 brake horsepower. It's got Thornton 100's signature wide wheel conversion, full Olin suspension and Brembo monoblock brake conversions, they're underway, and custom paint. It's got plans for 300 brake horsepower next winter. Basically, they're not going to make this as a customer bike. This is just something they're doing for fun to see what you can get out of the bobber. It does look immense. It's an amazing looking machine, and these guys do amazing jobs on customising brand new Triumphs as well. So yeah, interesting. Good that it exists, but you can't go and buy one because it'd just be prohibitively expensive, they say. Okay, next up, Enfield set speed record. Another speed record here. This time, again another bike I'm the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. While we're on that subject, by the way, everybody keeps up, or a lot of people keep asking me what's happened to my 650 Interceptor. Well, it's still at the custom house. Talking of custom houses, long story which I'll go into when I get it back. It's been a long time coming. The bike is being worked on, and I will do a reveal of it as soon as it's ready. But I'm not holding my breath anytime soon. I've been trying to get this customised since July of last year. So it's coming up to the year anniversary. The current people that have got it have had it for 5 months. I'm sure maybe within the next 5 months we might see it. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, back to this one. Enfield set speed record called the Sabre. This machine is based on a 2019 Interceptor 650. Puts out around 70 brake horsepower, which is up from 47 on the normal bike. So hell of a leap. The intention was to compete at 2020 Speed Week at Lake Gardner in South Australia, a salt lake similar to Bonneville. The pandemic scuppered that plan. However, the rider Charlie Hallam posted a class record of 121.78 miles an hour beforehand, and is before gradually setting a new standard of 132 miles an hour. So it's done actually 132.05 on it. The capacity of the bike is unchanged as per the rules. The crank has been balanced, rods shot peened, whatever that means, and new pistons added to help raise compression to a heady 11-to-1, requiring 98 RON fuel. Heads and ports have been modified to flow as much fuel as possible, and they are special custom valves. So it's been heavily modded, obviously, the engine, but it's still basically the same engine, and it's getting that sort of power out of it. Nuts. Great stuff. I love to see people doing this sort of thing. I just think I love these eccentric stuff. Speed records, unlike racing, I do have an interest in. I don't know why, but yeah, it looks fascinating. Let's hope he does get to run it on the salt at some point soon. Next up, now this looks good, Italian Revolution, the Ducati Monster, a bike that someone passed me by in the past, but this latest version that came out this year does look cool, doesn't it? £10,643 on the road, 937cc, so it's almost a litre bike, but it looks light and agile, doesn't it? It just looks like it's going to go. 109 brake horsepower, which is a great amount for the road, and 188 kilograms wet, so very, very light. I think this is going to be an absolute hoot to ride. And again, this is, if I'm choosing my bikes carefully that I'm going to ride and review on the channel, this is one that I definitely want to have a go on. So I'll talk to Ducati later on about whether I can borrow one of these and when. But later in the year, maybe I'll get a go on one of these. It says here, the V-twin is completely revamped for 2021. Tall, slim, the Monster has a delicate low-speed handling, super light steering, and is fabulously agile. That's how it looks, doesn't it? Let's see what the verdict is. And this is from Mike Armitage at MCN. It's a genuine slap-in-the-face surprise, it says here. More agile and easier to sling about than an MT-09, better feel and presentation than an 890 Duke, and more cheeky fun than a Street Triple. Blimey. Yeah, that is all some praise indeed, isn't it? It's as fruity or friendly as you want. I reckon it's a cracker, is what Mike Armitage says. So yeah, that's definitely one worth riding. 5 stars they've given it. What do you make to this? Ducati Monster, anyone? Should we go for one of them? I think it looks good. Okay, last story then, before we get on to my parish notices. Do stay around for those. A shower of strength, it says here. This is the updated CBR 650R. I mentioned this because I recently posted a load of videos on the Honda CB650R, but I really enjoyed having. Looks like the old Fireblade, but great, again, one of those bikes that if you like a sports bike would be a great bike as a first big bike. Anyway, they've done some updates on it, it seems. They've given it some new separate function big piston forks on the front, and all sorts of other stuff as well. Let's see what Dan Sutherland says. The CBR 650R is the last of a rare breed, an engaging 4-cylinder middleweight sports bike capable of thrilling on the road. I agree, it's great fun. You can absolutely thrash your pants off it. You're not at stupid speeds, and you can really enjoy this bike. It's a novice-friendly superbike lookalike that's a practical for the daily commute and poised enough for weekend fun. I completely agree with that. 649cc, 93.3 brake horsepower, which is all you need on the road. 208 kilograms curb weight, so not stupidly light, but not silly heavy either, and just over, tad over 8,000 quid if you want one. So yeah, if you want a practical sports bike for the road, do check out the CBR 650R. A lovely bike in all respects, I thought. All right, there we go. That's it for bike news this month then. 4 papers done and dusted. Hope you found that of some interest. Got a few bits and pieces as ever that I want to run past you for what I call parish notices. It's not Paris notices, parish notices. Now, for those of you that aren't in the UK, we have a weird government structure, the most local bit of which is called a parish council, and it's like some local busybodies meet up in the village hall and decide what's going to happen to, I don't know, the litter collection or something. Well, maybe not that. What's going to happen to tidying up the local playing fields, or whether there's going to be cucumber sandwiches at the cricket pavilion. I don't know what they do exactly, but anyway, they're called a parish council, and they often have a little sign up that says parish notices, and on it will be all sorts of weird adverts. So that's why I call it parish notices. All right, so that's that. So first thing, Enfield Meteor. Now, you may have noticed on Monday, those of you eagle-eyed, that I did post very briefly a video on the new Enfield Meteor. Well, Royal Enfield sadly asked me to pull the video because they got the dates wrong. They told me I could publish it on the 27th, but in fact they've now delayed the launch, so that video will have to appear at a later date, if indeed I do post it again. So if you're wondering why you may have seen one video and then suddenly it disappeared, I then posted the speed triple video instead. That's what that was all about. So sorry about that if you saw a bit of the video and then it disappeared. That's what happened there. Right, next up, you may have noticed, if you're eagle-eyed, you may have seen the Canary Motorcycle Tours are back sponsoring the channel. I'm absolutely thrilled about that. You will have seen their logo on the front and end of the video, and you'll be seeing them throughout next month and going on forward, hopefully forever, as Canary Motorcycle Tours are gearing up to getting themselves back in business again, having gone through this nightmare pandemic situation. Of course, the the issue with Spain still is, and Canary Islands of course come in with Spain, is that you know, they've had no business for the last couple of years, but hopefully things will be changing soon now that we seem to be getting to grips a little bit with the pandemic. We're keeping our fingers crossed that maybe the Canary Islands will be allowed to travel there. It comes off of our, what we call here in the UK, the amber list, and be able to travel there freely soon. Fingers crossed for that anyway, and best of luck to Canary Motorcycle Tours with relaunching the business. They're not only in the Canary Islands of course, but in Slovenia too now, and I cannot wait to get out and see those guys again. I regard these people as my personal friends. They're great fun. Martin and Joy out there, can't wait to come and ride with you guys again. So thanks for sponsoring the videos once again, so you'll notice those logos on the videos. Oh, I'd already mentioned new merch. I've got a few new bits of merch on the channel. There's the grey neck buff now, but also the mug, as I've already talked about. The other thing, long time coming, lots of people asked for it, Missenden Flyer key rings. They're only £3.50. Check them out on the website if you need a new key ring. Thought I'd mention that because they're a bargain. That's www.themissendenflyer.com if you want one of those. Videos coming up in the next month. We've got more on the Hayabusa. My in-depth video is coming up on that. Those videos that I've already published have gone down quite well. So one more on that coming up. 2 more videos on the Honda Fireblade, including my in-depth video, what a bike that is. And yes, if pushed between the Busa and the Fireblade, I do prefer the Fireblade. Slightly different sorts of bikes, but yeah, amazing that was. I've got the 3-part series coming up. This last weekend just gone, I went to Wales on my GS. It was fantastic to be out on the GS. I had a great time, and I met up with the North Wales police up there, and we went out for a day on patrol. I've made 3 videos about that. It's a 3-parter. Those are coming up soon. I hope you enjoy them. I really enjoyed riding up there, except the weather wasn't that great. In fact, when I rode up there, it took me something like 5 hours on the motorway. It rained stair rods the whole way. Okay, sorry about that. You might be looking through a bit of mist. Let me give you a little wipe. There we go, is that better? Reason for that is I've just had to put the camera in the freezer. Oh, and there's a bit of condensation in the middle of the lens as well. So can't remember where I was, but I'll just have to finish up now because the camera overheated and turned itself off. So sorry about that. I was just going to say, coming up, did I mention that I've got the first ride of the Harley Fat Boy as well? That's a cracking video. I think you're going to enjoy that one. Sorry, it's misty in here. It's the freezer has rather done the camera in. Next bike news, make a note, is Thursday, July the 1st. That's when I'll do the next one of these. Hopefully the camera won't overheat in that case, and it'll be clearer by then. It will have defrosted. And that's pretty much it. Just last thing to say is huge thanks as ever to my patrons and to my sponsors for making all this stuff possible. Thank you to you for watching. And that's it for this time and bike news. Hope you enjoyed that. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Missenden Flyer. Cheerio. Let's give you another little wipe. That's better immediately. How annoying.